Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from Capital One Bank and Chase Commercial Term Lending, the Witkoff Group, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Greenberg Traurig, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Foley & Lardner, Friedman, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investment Developers, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Madison Realty Capital, Massey-Knackle Realty Services, Tong Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, N.A., Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Newbanks, MHP Real Estate Services, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Sterling Risk, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Continuum Company, the CUNY TV Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
Restaurant business in New York City is a difficult thing. There are very, very few restaurants that really survive for 20, 30, 40, or 50 years. 70. So today, 70 years, okay, Lenny, be good for a second. So today, my buddy Drew Nieporent, a.k.a. my executive producer and the co-host of the Stoller Report when it comes to food, has assembled a group of his friends who are the legendary restaurateurs, and they're going to talk about how difficult it is to go into the business today and how it's changed over the years. My guests, they include Michael Tong, the man behind Shun East, Shun West, okay. Lenny Kern, there's no better pizza in America. I don't want to give this as an advertorial, but there's no better pizza in Spumoni than go into Gravesend for Spumoni Gardens. Lenny Kern from Spumoni Gardens. There's a man in Wall Street. There was a man who went there in 1973, really came over in 1956 from Greece. The man has been around. He says he's retired. He's never retired. The legendary Harry Poulakakos. Poulakakos. Oh, and last but not least, there's a man who's going to be celebrating his birthday in a couple weeks, who's been around, who has never been in a kitchen to cook, but who's run everything, who's one of the best restaurateurs, my dear friend Drew Nieporent of Myriad.
Yeah.
Good okay. Title. So, industrial engineer, how hard would it be for you to open up a restaurant today? And it's 50 years. I mean, you were 12 when you came over?
No. I was in this country when I was 18.
Okay,
actually,
I realized.
I went to school, then finished the school, and I'm studying engineering for my father. You know, as a good son in those days, you listen to your father.
That's why the Chinese and the Jews were so close. You know, there was always the guilt responsibility.
In those days, you're getting engineering. Today, you're getting an MBA. You know, so but my thinking is, if I want to do something for myself, in those days, I think the Chinese restaurant probably no big business people can take over, and also you don't require lots of money, but you need a good partner as a chef. And of course, you want to do something different, get away from the old traditional Cantonese. And so, you know, you take a chance.
That you have to have nerve to go into the business. Okay,
guts.
I mean, you know, there are few, if you're only the 4-star New York Times restaurant. There's no 4-star. We've done shows on 3 stars.
Right.
You've been there. You've been rated. You have a cookbook. Okay, you are a legendary place. How hard would it be today? You know, we were talking before the show, before Lenny arrived. How expensive is it today to open up a restaurant as compared to 40 years ago, when you opened up?
Today it's very, very expensive because it's a lot of technical things. You know, you need a lot of permits, and everything takes time. You need architects. You have to watch every half an inch, whatever it is. You have all these departments which they watch all these things, so you have to be very careful. And all this, they cost a lot of money.
Yeah, you know, you bring up the most interesting thing. We used to look for 4 walls, and if there was a kitchen,
yeah,
it was all about the food. Then suddenly, restaurant designers like Adam Tahani, Sam Lapata, and then now David Rockwell, they created a theater atmosphere, almost theater design to restaurants.
I mean, like the concept
and
of
it's its own marketing. Sometimes,
with
but sometimes you walk into a restaurant and it takes your breath away, like Tavern on the Green in the old days, right? And you think, wow,
yes,
I want to come here. But you don't know who the chef is. You haven't eaten one morsel of food, but the place looks great. I think in the case of Shun Lee especially, you know, because Michael did something unique. He was uptown. You know, he created an atmosphere.
It wasn't Chinese in Chinatown, okay? It was
but it
Chinese.
Hotel Chinese.
Right.
Well, we all know that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the most profound food for Jewish people is Chinese food.
Still is.
You know, I don't know about that, but every Sunday night, it has to be a Chinese dinner.
New China Inn, you know, on Church Avenue. You remember, not too far. You know, you got it.
Best Chinese restaurant in Brooklyn was we used to have Richard Yee's, but I thought next door there was another thing. I forgot what it was called. Trying to remember. They had, to me, the owner was a big gambler, and he had a lobster roll.
Is that part of the real?
No, it was true. He was most restaurateurs have some kind of vice. He did. And Marjan, name was Marjan. I couldn't till today. I can't remember the dishes, how great they were, different, so delicious. Everything had a distinct, exact, wonderful taste.
It was the MSG
Marjan in Brooklyn was at the time crazy.
Did you ever eat that?
Oh, but today, you know, actually, there's a third Chinatown in Brooklyn, 8th Avenue.
yes,
Right, 8th Avenue.
Oh, there's all Chinese restaurants there.
But my
Big
question is,
8th Avenue there.
you know what?
God,
We're talking about this. Harry was saying before the show, you know, that he tried to talk his son not to go into this business. Do you want your kids to go into this business? Because, you know, it's a 7-day business, okay? You know,
Right. No holidays, no
there are
nights
no
off.
holidays. There's nights, and you know what? You have to be at that business to watch that business, okay? Because unless you're an owner, people work in a different way, right?
I would say it's the family structure
Yeah,
today. The problem is this: I think it's the way that the young boy's mind is set today. Meaning that they think that if they own a business, that they're going to be home and it's 9 to 5, and they're going to be home every night and off every weekend. My hours. If somebody says to me, Lenny, what are your hours? I tell them when I have to be there and when I could leave. Meaning that if I'm that night, or I have an appointment for a big college graduation, and the chef is sick, the dishwasher goes out, my walking box is broke, I'm staying.
Okay,
I'm not going to that party that
You know,
okay.
my son does the same thing now. You know, he's young man, but 18 and 20 hours a day sometimes is nothing.
You know, I did the life story on my other show, Building New York Ahead, the legendary Jimmy Neary. And Jimmy is open 364 days a year.
Wow.
He closes on Christmas. That's it, okay? And even when his wife passed on, after the funeral, the restaurant was open, okay? 365. And his daughter, who's a partner at Goldman Sachs, a partner at Goldman Sachs, is at the restaurant waiting tables at night and greeting customers. Okay?
Well, because the extraordinary thing about the group we've assembled today is the longevity and the consistency and the high performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody, and look, you know,
70 years?
we're all looking
70
good, I
years.
think, right?
Right, 70 years,
You know,
50 years.
and you know what I attribute that to? if you love, I was telling him, if you really love, he says it, he's the man. He says you got to live it, eat it, breathe it. You got to be that place. And if you really feel the pride and the sense of accomplishment in your business that you made, you stood, you sweated, especially the restaurant part, you have to see it succeed. Your will just takes over and says, you know what? I'm not going to let anybody destroy what it took me all these years to make. And I'm going to make sure, no matter who they are, they're not going to destroy what I built over all these years.
But you would have to agree with me, I think, that it's very hard to find somebody to do what you do.
Right.
In other words, you might find people who can take the hours, but for whatever reason, it always falls back on your shoulders.
Everything.
The responsibility to keep it going.
You
Yeah,
know,
all the time exists that like that because you have to love what you do. If you don't, you can succeed.
But that's why your restaurants and everyone sitting here has done well, because it's your life and you love what you do, as opposed to saying it's a job, I got to leave at 5 o'clock.
No,
Okay, you know
that doesn't work.
Okay, and you know you have to go the extra mile, and you know you're also all responsible for the quality of the food. Okay, you know.
That's true.
Okay, and the quality of the food is so important. You know, we've done so many shows
100%.
on the restaurant business due to Drew, and I've seen the different type of people.
I didn't bring you any shoemakers yet.
Once in a while,
Maybe one or two. I don't know.
But that's the key. But the part of the thing is, and you said to me before, it's also the landlords. The longevity of business over here is the landlords. Okay, and that's a big key.
Well,
I mean, you've seen.
Yes, I believe. You know, I mean, actually, I have a excellent landlord on one of my restaurants. You know, we never really have any problem to sign a new lease. You know, and he will ask me how much you can afford to pay me, and that's the number. You don't see landlord like that these days, anyway.
Very few landlords.
And
like
also-
that.
Smart landlord.
Right.
I'd rather have a full space paying me rent than an empty space owing me money.
But you see, in a way, what Harry's son has recently done at the district, you have a landlord, being Brookfield, who said, I want to make this place a destination. I want to create something different. So I want to give an opportunity. I don't know the deal, but I know that from the real estate trade, it's been said that it was over there. The same way that you had Richard Lefrak at Nobu, and the same way that Mickey Palin, saying, I want to keep on the east side a quality, great, legendary Chinese restaurant.
Today, to maintain a good restaurant, it takes a lot of elements. It's not simply one element. You have to have good chefs, you got to have a good staff, you got a good assistants, and you got to be also very lucky have no labor issue.
good luck with that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You all
Because
do.
10 years ago, 20 years ago, we don't have that issue.
No.
But today you do. And the bigger the restaurant you are, you got to be more careful.
And
He's part owner.
Yeah.
He's also your part kindergarten teacher.
but
You have to juggle all those personalities.
the longevity in the location is very important. Tribeca Grill is Tribeca Grill, okay? Nobu will do well at the new location because Lower Manhattan has changed over there. But the institution of being in a certain market, okay? And you got to look at L&B Spumoni Gardens over here. I mean, who would go to Gravesend in the past? Now, and it's not the chic part of Brooklyn.
No, it's
Okay? The chic part of Brooklyn is Williamsburg or downtown Brooklyn or the Slope, as they call, or Prospect. No, that's the perceived thing.
I think
okay?
L&B is the destination
No,
in Gravesend.
I believe it is the
In
destination.
other words, when you describe it, the first thing they say is, it's 10 blocks from L&B. It's around the corner
Mr.
from
Stall's
L&B.
closed, the Knishes. I mean, there was another.
Shame. There's no more delis in our area. Nothing.
We all started in this business to actually arrive at this moment. But this moment is somewhat bittersweet because when we were younger, we were looking out there and seeing institutions, revered places. And today, I would say our restaurants are revered, but it's an exception rather than the rule. The Four Seasons, the 21 Club, the Rainbow Room, the Tavern on the Green. One by one, they're getting cut and
Fewer.
Yeah.
They evaporate.
No,
once.
no,
They
but
evaporate.
but part of the, it's a different palate, perhaps. It's a different consumer. We joked going back 10 years with me on the show. We used to call visitors to New York tourists.
Right.
And you had to balance the number who come in. Now they're visitors, and we love them.
Okay, so it's a change
Now we get a lot of
the
LB.
customer base.
Of course.
Okay, it's also the people who went to the Chinese restaurants on the Sunday night in Brooklyn were local people. Okay, the people who went to Shun were locals, but people wanted to go to Shun. It was an institution. If you were downtown, there's no place to go but Harry's. Okay, in the Wall Street, Stone Street area, there was no place. Okay, Delmonico's, but it was really Harry's over
Harry's
there.
of Hanover.
Okay, Harry's of Hanover.
And now Ulysses.
Okay, yeah. but what I'm saying, when there was Tribeca, it was Tribeca Grill and Nobu. Okay, originally and Montrachet. Okay?
Montrachet,
yes.
Montrachet. But I'm saying,
And luckily, because I have a good landlord, he happens to be the son of the deceased landlord. I've been able to sign a lease 30 years later that I can live with.
right at Bitard.
But every other
Yeah.
place is very difficult.
I wouldn't have said no to you anyway. If I was that landlord there, I could say no.
You're surprised what landlords do
But
today.
what you're saying is all of these ingredients, it's like the meal. The ingredients have to go to the deal, to the situation. But today, how important, is social media? I mean,
Big
to
influence.
everybody.
Yeah.
You
I
have a
would say
Facebook.
that-
I know you have a Facebook page.
I would say it was this, honestly. Just the other day we were talking about it. We had people come in and somebody had a really great slice and we're discussing how wonderful it was to come in and have a hot slice where they were sitting there and they seen the steam come right off the plate. And I would say I've heard it maybe 20 times after that person put it on Facebook from the people. So it's almost like they're advertising for you.
Yes.
It works. It's a two-edged sword, though.
Okay, years ago there was no social media. I mean,
No.
and
wasn't.
you know what?
Word
We
of
were
mouth.
talking before the show. We were talking with Michael. The biggest problem is the social media and some of the articles, the Yelps, where the person writes that's negative, and you can't control that person's comment about the place.
No, but we could control the quality and how that goes out to the customer. And if you're overseeing the quality control of your product and how your workers interact with your customer, you have a good wrangle on it. But if you're an absentee owner and you're never there and you're depending on that worker to make the reputation or the branding, like Nobu, who has the best brand, how could you get better than Nobu's brand? You got to be there. That's the job
you
of the
see,
boss.
But if you look at it that way, what Nobu did for Japanese food is what Michael did for Chinese food, okay? And what Harry on the steak and the American food did over there and what you have. It's a different, okay?
Do you think it was really that, or was that he came up with a different outlook on that Japanese food? Meaning he made it chic to have sushi. He made it chic to have a great, well, I think he has one of the best bars in the city in his restaurants, to eat out, a date destination
Also
with
changing
that sushi.
it's changing the
taste for sushi.
Changing the revolution about Japanese food. It's not
Right, it
just-
changed the revolution.
Changed the revolution.
It changed the revolution.
It's not just sushi,
Or evolution.
but there's no sukiyaki or teriyaki or
Yeah.
shabu shabu or tempura type of thing. It's a revolution. Combine the sushi and the
But and you're actually you've done the same thing. Really, all I did was make it accessible. In other words, a lot of times in these restaurants when we were growing up, we saw the way they treated guests. They made it impossible to get in. They were intimidating. I worked in all these French restaurants. They made it very difficult. So the Japanese way of eating and the Japanese restaurants, especially in New York, were very inaccessible. A lot of times they had the sushi screens up, all the signage was in Japanese. They only wanted to market to the Japanese. Chinese restaurants, they don't understand hospitality. You understand what I'm saying about this. The Shun was a breakthrough.
Yes.
Because
I'm gonna amplify
they had to meet the customer, at the demanding level that customer was walking in your door. So with Nobu, I made it accessible.
I'm going to amplify your answer.
I tried to make it easier.
I also think you made it sexy.
Well,
what
that's
I mean by
true.
that is that he turned that
Nobu made it
sushi
sexy.
restaurant. In other words, he made it a real alluring night out dinner, like that date, like, you know, oh, where are you going to take that beautiful girlfriend or guy? It was sexy to go
Making
to
an experience.
In other words, they went for sushi.
Yes.
You know what?
And it was like a really
Okay,
hot
but-
night
but
out.
Here's, you know,
He turned it sexy.
You bring in an important thing. Shun Li is an experience. It's not. It's there. New York City, you know, Chinatown, other places. They're you know, what was it, Nancy's Pig Haven and some of the other Pig Haven. You know, there are places. They Peking Duck House. They don't have the ambiance. You know, there's a personality to Shun Li. Okay,
It was in Wall Street.
Okay,
Wall Street.
you know, but it is okay.
Yeah, Wall Street.
Harry's a personality, and even the ones that you say you're retired,
That was big.
the other ones.
But
all have a
it is personality, you know, because we always we recognize our customers. We give them a good food, we serve them right, and that's what you have to do. You know, really, you have to take care of your customers.
And you know, he's in a part of town. Let's face it, nobody's been successful in that part of town. Maybe it's going to happen, but a lot of talented people have tried. There's a lot of money spent on restaurants in Wall Street area. As a kid, I remember I went to the Coachman, the Talisman.
But
the
nobody
Left Racks.
puts the effort, you know. All these
But
people
you-
that went
so
out of
here-
business.
so
But
here's-
the streets roll up
Yes.
at night.
You
That's
know,
the
but
thing.
when you know, let's look at something. And you know, I had Bruce Bozzi on the show, on the Life Story show. The Palm has been around, okay, but the Palm's hurting. You know, certain locations are doing fine. It's difficult to keep that business, that brand, that ambiance, that product alive, especially if you don't have the right personality, the people of
Who's
hiring.
the visionary behind it?
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Like, look at L&B. L&B was a simple a little shack producing ice and ice cream onto the block was bought. You talk about landlords. There's no landlord at L&B. Our grandfather bought it for $796. We owned the whole block. Who's gonna
Spent too much money. I know.
Right. And it evolved from a little shack producing ice and ice cream to the public into a pizzeria, a luncheonette,
And a restaurant.
We
exactly
extended
what
the
you
room
did.
in the front. In other words, if I would have just let it go and just let it be the way it was, L&B wouldn't have evolved. It's
But the same-
evolving every
but the
day.
same
It's a constant
But
project.
here's what happened. Michael had the same thing when he went into business. You know, in 1966. You know, they were on 48th Street and 2nd Avenue, and then they had the other place on 92nd Street. It was a different business, and he evolved it, and he went to the East Side and West Side to take care of the Lincoln Center.
Well, the whole thing is Craig Claiborne. That changed the whole, because he gave a 4-star to the dynasty.
Right.
And then I opened the Hunan, which is the first Hunanese restaurant in the whole country. And Raymond Sokolov gave another 4-star. So in today, forget about it. All right, there's no such thing as Chinese restaurant getting 4 stars.
Oh.
And so in the 5 years time, we got 2 restaurants 4-star. So that really put Shun Li on the map.
Right, but you know, the American steakhouses, none of them get 4 stars.
Well, Mimi Sheridan actually gave the Palm 4 stars.
Now,
The problem,
we're talking.
no, we would have to have another show about all the Michigas when it comes to restaurant criticism, also Yelp and all the commenters in the social media. But we used to really need that. And Michael, you would say the 4 stars obviously helped you. Today, it's not the same.
No,
It's not the same today.
Drew, was
They
there
don't
a
have that power.
steakhouse by you? Remember, were you in charge of Maxwell's Plum?
Yes.
At one time?
Yes.
I remember going to Maxwell's Plum, and right next door to Maxwell's Plum was a Manhattan steakhouse. I'm almost positive.
Right,
Larry's.
Right.
Larry's?
Manhattan.
Larry owned
No, I think it was Manhattan.
No, it was called Manhattan Cafe. It was one of the
steakhouse.
most successful places.
Later on became
Okay.
Later on.
It was so successful, and the guy just matrimonial problems, other situation,
Right.
Yeah.
lost the place, and then he tried to open up 3 other places, and he's out on the street. He was trying to do, but it's you
Yeah,
gotta have.
one time he's big.
Right. It was huge. It was the place. It was the steak place that everybody went to. He was a cousin of the Palm.
Lenny really said it a second ago. If you don't stay on top of your game
Right.
and you just can't rest on your laurels, you know, as much as we want to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But nowadays, you got to keep moving. And
So here's
And
a
not
quick
only
question.
that, you have to expand, and you have to give what people they want. Because you start good, you had a little place, but you became bigger and bigger, and People, they wanted
Sounds
different
like
things. You
sounds
was
like a
there
great
to
menu.
provide the right way. And that's the thing.
How does the next generation, not you people, okay, the younger generation evolve to keep their businesses around because there are trends and other things?
It's not such a thing today as the next generation. Very few places. Because today is no restaurateurs. They are investors.
Right.
They give a guy who doesn't know the business, opens a restaurant. If he loses it, he doesn't care. And some of them, they hurt the good guys. But that's how life is.
And even the good restaurateurs now, they open a place and they don't even let it age for 30 days. The press, suddenly they're opening the next place. And having lived
Oh,
through...
wait a second. You remember you brought me that one guy over there?
Very insightful.
But my point is this. Even when I was burgeoning and doing a lot of things, I was smart enough to see the movie business and say, you know, Bradley Cooper, he's a great actor, but you can't release 3 movies with him in it in the same weekend.
But you know what?
It's counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense.
You know what? Let's look at Danny Meyer. When he opened up the first place, it took him 10 years before.
Square?
10 years.
He didn't open Gramercy for 10 years.
And part of the reason is, and it was on the Life
it's
Story show that he said to me, was he saw that his father had a business and he went bankrupt. And he was worried. So when you learn, slow and
wins
steady.
the race.
So what I would like to say, needless to say, without the help of my executive producer, co-host, buddy Drew, we would never have this. But I think, okay, together we put together a great show. I'd like to thank Michael, Lenny, Harry, and Drew. See us on Facebook, you know, Instagram, all the others. But we'll see you next week.